here we've got our first cap sleeve, which is pretty cute. It's taken off the sleeve, just the fitted sleeve block, so it's quite neat around the shoulder here, and it has this this curve that goes up on the seam, and it also has there's a seam along the bottom, so the sleeve is lined completely, and so it's joined together at the hem, understitched, and then folded up, and then the two layers are stitched together, and then they're stitched together as one into the armhole. Yeah, so it's a pretty cute style. So I'll show you how to pattern make that. Alright, so when we start, we've got a little bit of prep to do. Because we're dealing with two layers of fabric, I want to take the ease out of the sleeve head, and the easiest way to do that is just to grab the block and just put the edges together here and work your way up around the sleeve head. And this is just a little bit easier, and it can be more accurate than taking measurements as well. Especially, well, I mean, if you take measurements with a grading ruler, that's fine, but measurements with a tape measure can always be a bit random. So remember this, the blocks don't have seam allowances, so that's why I'm putting both of the edges together like this. Okay, so this, with these two marks here, you can see there's about 6 millimeters ease in the back sleeve head and about 1 centimeter in the front. So we're just going to take that out. And the easy way to do that is just to put a little mark where the notch is here, and down the bottom of the sleeve, just follow the grain line down and put your pencil on the bottom, and then just spin the sleeve head around until the mark that we put there lines up with the shoulder notch there. Okay, and then go back down to the bottom again, and we'll do the other side. So swing it around so that the front armhole mark, sleeve head mark matches up. And then we're just going to draw a little bit of the underarm. So then this is our new sleeve head here without any ease. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of that point off the top there as well. So this is our new line and the notch for the sleeve head there. So this is one that I did earlier, so I'll just transfer the marks here so it's the same. And you can see here that I've done the underarm here. Actually, that didn't come out very well. So at the underarm here, I've made it just 2.5 centimeters long, 2.5 on each side. And then at the center of the sleeve, I've made it 11 centimeters. So from the sleeve head down to this line here, 11 centimeters. And then our grain line, just be in the center of that. Okay, and then rub that little bit out at the top there. And then we're just literally going to add seam allowances to that. So 1 centimeter.
How did you work out the shaping for that, Mark? Like I noticed the piece of brown pattern paper, you had all these lines on there. Is that how you developed it, or?
No, those lines are actually for our next sleeve cap pattern. Yeah, I think you just measure, just find a measurement on the dummy, like put the long sleeved block onto the dummy and then just measure it and see where you like.
So what length you want for
yeah, it can be a bit,
shoulder
and the thing is too, we don't well, you could actually have this, like have the sleeve this length and have it going straight across and into the armhole. But if you have it going into the armhole, then you've got to somehow finish the underarm, and you could potentially put a binding there. But with this method here, because it's a whole sleeve, we can actually add a seam allowance on there and then just bag it out at the underarm, and it means that then you've got a whole sleeve to sew in to the armhole, so you get pretty much like a finished product without having to deal with little leftover underarm bits.
And it still looks nice and short.
Yeah, exactly, because you can't. You're looking at this length here. You're not looking at the bit that goes under the arm.
Yeah.
So 1 centimetre seam allowances for the sleeve head, and for the underarm. Actually, something looks a bit odd here. Just going to check. 2.5. Oh, it's a tiny bit. This side here is a tiny bit longer than the other side. And then the seam along the bottom here, because it's on a curve and it's going to be bagged out, I'm just adding a 6 millimetre seam allowance along the bottom edge there. Let's see. So 6 millimetre seam allowance there, and then just transfer your notch, your balance notches onto the raw edge of the pattern, and you could also give yourself a notch on the top of the curve for the sleeve hem as well. So your grain line will follow the middle of the sleeve, and it's literally just sleeve, cut 1 pair in fabric, cut 1 pair, lining. You could, if you had a fine fabric, you could cut, instead of cutting a separate lining in a separate fabric, you could cut 2 pair, and so you could have the sleeve bagged out with the self fabric. But generally, if the outer fabric like this, in the sample it's a drill, so I've used a lighter fabric for the lining on the inside. And our size on there, and there's our cap sleeve done. So the previous one that we did had the seam along the bottom here, which means that you actually get a much more fitted sleeve around the sleeve head here. It sits much closer to the body. With this one here, the second one that we're going to do, this bottom edge is actually on the fold, so it's a double sleeve. Comes down, folds, and folds back up again. And because you can't have this fold, like you can't do a fold on the curve, obviously, so you need this to be a straight line. But because this is a straight line, it does mean that the sleeve sits away from the sleeve, from the top of the arm, and that's just one of the things with this style. And the one nice thing about this too is if you have a lighter fabric, like if you were using, like this lining fabric here with the flowers on it, if you were using that for the sleeve, you could use, you could have that thinner fabric because it's a finer fabric. In the drill here, it's getting a little bit thick, but if you were using a softer, finer fabric, you get a nice finish because it means that the sleeve is lined, and you don't have to worry about doing a hem on the edge of the sleeve head as well.
And would it maybe not sit out as much too if it was in a lighter fabric? Would it sit down onto the arm a bit more maybe?
I don't, maybe a little bit more. It does come out quite a lot, and you'll see, with the construction method, why this happens as well. But I mean, you could potentially do that, and then, and then tuck it and have a little button there or something as well, or do a little inverted pleat and have
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that there. That's pretty cute,
Yeah.
and then just tack it through. Like you could lift this up and you could actually sew it underneath through these layers, so you wouldn't see anything on the outside. So, that's an option as well.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so we start with this one. We start with the sleeve head. So this is the cap sleeve that we did before. The pattern stays the same. And what we need to do now is we're just going to turn this around a little bit so you can see, is that we draw a straight line way along. And what happens here is we've got these lines. So I've got a center line here, and then I've got two lines sort of flaring out. These are quite straight, these areas here, so I've left a bit of a gap, and then I put another two near the underarm here. And this is I've done this by eye, and whatever I've done on one side, I've done on the other side. And the idea now is that let's get a center line. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with this, the bottom here on the intersection there, and then up the top. And what we want to do is we want to spin this around so that the next section here is at least parallel to that line. Okay, so what we're doing is we're flattening out the sleeve so that this becomes a straight line. So then we trace down to the next one, and you don't actually have to put a mark here, but you can if you want to. And then we swing from the next one out. So swing that out again so that this little section here on the sleeve hem is parallel to the line that you've drawn, and then go down to the next one, and then again. So this one here, so I've flattened out this next section here, drawn that down to there, and just make sure you put in your balance notches. And then with this one here, because it's actually swinging up here, we're going to go the other way so that we can make this line parallel to the line. And then the same with the next one, we just want to have that coming down. Okay, and you'll see there that we now have a flat line along the bottom. So the actual stitch line, and this is the stitch line because there's no seam allowance on this yet. So the stitch line stays exactly the same length, but the bottom edge here becomes a straight line, so you can put it on the fold.
That's really clever, isn't it? I
And
don't think
so-
I've seen that done that way before, Mark.
Yeah, well, it's actually come in these instructions. So this is a 1950s pattern making book here, and you can see the instructions there.
Yeah, that's really clever.
Yeah, it's fun. So we're just straight here, out to the next one. And then back, actually that's pretty much the same, that one there, because it's the same distance from here to here. So just go down and then put in our front balance notch there, and then again back this way. To the underarm there. So there's our new sleeve head. So we just need to, we'll just smooth this off. Just take, if there's any little lumps, you can just take those out so you get a smoother line. Okay, so balance notches here. And then at the underarm here, we take that down, and I'm actually going to straighten that up. So I've gone from this and taken it straight down so that it's at right angle to the fold there. And then the same on the other side, we'll just take that down at a right angle. And our seam allowance onto that. And then just go around here. So our back balance notches, our shoulder notch, and then our front balance notch there. And then what we do with this is we cut out along this line here, have the fold, and then trace off the other section. So this is the one that I actually used for the sample. So you can see here the original shape here, and then I've cut this out here, folded it over, traced out this on the other side, and then we've cut out the other side with the balance notches, and this is our pattern piece. So the line from shoulder to shoulder is our grain line, and this would be sleeve. So this is just cut one pair because we don't have a lining. We just need one pair of these, and size 10. Okay, and this is our cap sleeve. That's with a folded hem.